Hello everyone, this is Ashley Tucker. Thank you for joining me today. Today I started with a piece of Canson watercolor paper taped down to a board. I'm going to be using this stencil with stars on it, and I'm just going to tape it down so that it doesn't move. There isn't any real particular reason that I chose Canson watercolor paper for this. I just kind of wanted the weight. It has a really nice weight to it, and I liked the texture for this piece. I pulled out my Ranger texture paste, and I'm going to put 3 little dabs of it right onto my craft mat. Next I took my Salty Ocean Distress Oxide ink, and I smooshed some of that ink right onto the craft mat, and I'm going to mix the first blob of texture paste with that color to dye it. Because the texture paste is white, it's going to lighten that blue color up a little bit, and it's going to come out this really pretty blue. So that's my first color, and I smoothed that over the top portion of the stencil, and then I'm going to move on to creating my next color of texture paste. This next color is Seedless Preserves. So again, I'm using my palette knife to really mix the ink with the paste really well, and then I'm going to scrape it up and spread it across the middle portion of the stencil, kind of going into the blue a little bit to mix those colors together. I even took a little bit of the remaining amount and I mixed it with the leftovers of the blue paste so that I could get an in-between color, and then I spread that in the middle of the 2 colors. The third color that I chose for this first piece is Wilted Violet. I really love the color that I got from mixing the Wilted Violet with the texture paste. This kind of lilac color, it is so beautiful. I love it so much. Once I had the paste smoothed out really nicely, I pulled the tape off really carefully, and then I lifted off the stencil, and then I'm going to set that aside to dry for a little while. While that first piece was drying, I started on a second one. For this second piece, I'm going to use the same stencil, but I'm going to use the crosshatch pattern on it. This particular stencil has 4 different small designs on it, so I'm actually just using the one right next to the stars that I used in the last one. I'm going to do pretty much the same thing with this one that I did with the last one. I'm just going to use different colors. The colors that I chose to use for this one are Twisted Citron, Evergreen Bough, and Faded Jeans. When you're working with this texture paste, you really want to make sure that you clean everything off really well as soon as you're done with it. As soon as I was done with the stencil and pulled it off, I immediately went to the sink and I rinsed it off and cleaned it off really well. And then I came back and I cleaned my craft mat off really well. And I just wanted to make sure that none of that paste was left to dry. And it actually comes off really easily when it's still wet. After I finished laying all the paste down for this one, I smoothed it out as best as possible and then scraped up any excess paste. I carefully removed the stencil and then I set the piece aside to dry for a little while. While both of those pieces were drying, I decided to work on the sentiments. First, I pulled out the My Favorite Things Happy Hippos stamp set, and I took this stamp which says, "It's your day." And then I took out the My Favorite Things Adorable Elephants stamp set, and I chose this stamp which says, "Dream Big." I used my powder tool to prep that paper for heat embossing, and then I stamped these sentiments in Versamark ink. I used the Hero Arts Silver Sparkle Embossing Powder. This is a really glittery, sparkly silver embossing powder. Once I finished embossing those, I cut it down into strips, and then I'm going to set them aside until I need them. I pulled out 2 of my pre-made white card bases, and then I also pulled out 2 pieces of colored paper to be backgrounds on those card bases, and I used my ATG gun to adhere them. For the first card, I chose a piece of purple cardstock that I got from Michaels, and for the second one, I chose this cornflower blue cardstock that I got from Simon Says Stamp. I took the panels of paper with those textured patterns on them, and I cut them down so that they'd fit on these card bases with a nice big border around them. I used a whole bunch of foam tape on the back of these to pop them up and give them some nice dimension. Next, I pulled out those sentiment strips that I created, and I'm going to pop them up with some foam tape right on top of that textured pattern. I really think that this card that says "It's Your Day" on it is a great masculine card. And that's really good for me because I am terrible at making masculine cards. So it's nice to be able to add this one to my stash. Once I had the sentiments done, I took out my white gel pen and I went around the borders on both of the cards with some dashed lines. You gotta have some dashed lines, right? To finish up both of these cards, I took out my Wink of Stella glitter brush and I went over all of that textured pattern on both cards. So for the first one, I went over all of the stars, and for the second one, I went over all of those cross hatch lines. And with that, both of these cards are done. And these were some really fun ones to make. I really enjoy working with that textured paste. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you really enjoyed watching these cards come together. I hope you liked seeing how you can dye your texture paste to get all sorts of colors. All of the supplies that I used for these cards can be found in the description down below. If you enjoyed watching, please be sure to hit the subscribe button so that you can see all of my future videos. I'm going to be back with a new video on Monday. Again, thank you for watching today. I really appreciate all of you, and I hope you have a great weekend.